Yo, my people, welcome to Rant and Randomness. I'm your host, Luvvie Ajayi Jones, New York Times bestselling author, speaker, and professional troublemaker. And I'm here to share dope conversations that'll give you something to think about, help you smile, and feel empowered to do what you feel compelled to do. So let's get into it. Today's interview is on time and extremely important, and you're gonna wanna listen and share with your friends. My guest is Stephanie L. Young. Stephanie serves as Chief Officer for Culture, Communications, and Media Partnerships at When We All Vote, a nonpartisan voting initiative launched by Michelle Obama. She has years of communication experience in the public and private sectors with organizations such as the Obama White House, where she worked for years, Congressional Leadership, NBC Universal Cable Entertainment, and BET. During her time in the White House, Stephanie served in two critical roles as Associate Communications Director and then as the Senior Public Engagement Advisor. In these roles, she led the press strategy around domestic policy announcements and created and managed critical relationships for the president in the African American community. During our conversation, we discover what her childhood was like. She is a global citizen for sure. We talk about how she started her career, how she was able to get a job at the Obama White House, and what she's doing now that has traces to what she used to do when she was younger. So let's jump into the interview and stick around. Before we jump into the interview, I want to make sure the Rants fam knows that my new book, Professional Troublemaker, The Fear Fighter Manual, comes out March 2nd, 2021, and is available for pre-order right now. Right now. I wrote this book because everything great in my life has come as a result of me choosing to be a professional troublemaker, from feeling afraid and choosing to do the scary thing anyway. We don't have to call ourselves fearless, because I don't think it exists, right? I think what we need to do is learn to fight fear and imposter syndrome by feeling it and using it as a fuel to become better versions of ourselves. The things that I'm talking about in this book will take you from being a fear hider to a fear fighter. And heaven knows we got a lot of things that bring up fear right now. So to order it, go to professionaltroublemakerbook.com to learn more and order from wherever you get books. Professionaltroublemakerbook.com. I am so excited for y'all to read this book. It's lit. Yo, so Stephanie, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
I wanted to be an actress. I desired to be on the stage. Was I ever? Not really. I think I might have acted in one play and I thought, this is my calling. And yeah, that never happened. I also wanted to be an obstetrician because I loved babies. And I was like, well, if I'm delivering babies, I get to hold them. So strange. So I never thought I would be here. Let's just put that out there. I wanted to be like an obstetrician or an actress or a mom. Those were my goals. Great goals though. Great goals still. It didn't end up being me. Not at least right now.
Here's the thing is, I feel like a lot of us wanted to be very things. I mean, again, failed doctor over here. Clearly didn't happen. So fully understand. So how were you when you were little? Like, what was little Stephanie like?
I was that kid that, every time my mom went to a parent-teacher conference, it was like, Stephanie's such a sweet girl, but she talks too much. Or I had to move her away from, her friend. They can't control themselves. They're always talking. But I was a helper. Like, I genuinely wanted to help people. I remember my elementary school here in Atlanta, there was a couple of kids with disabilities, and I would love going to that class so I could push them to lunch and to feed them. And I think it's probably because I was obsessed with babies too. So I was thinking, this is kind of like a mother-child situation. Right. But I never wanted anybody to feel like they weren't a part of the group. I remember a little Hispanic girl came to our class, and this is like, in the 90s? So it wasn't a huge influx of Latinx Americans, at least in Atlanta at that time. And the little girl didn't speak English. Her name was Karina. I did not speak Spanish, but I would definitely count, to 10 in Spanish with her, as if I was communicating something different, or I would just be speaking gibberish or translating for her. So I took that was kind of my role at times. I was the person or the kid trying to help other kids and, or, trying to be in the center of attention. I did, I was a different kid, but I also had a very different childhood, not a typical childhood. Growing up here in Atlanta, but then also living in South Africa for 4 years.
So tell me about that. What made your childhood atypical?
Well, first, my father was a bishop in the AME Church. He was elected, and for all y'all who don't know, AME is African Methodist Episcopal Church. It is the
Word.
oldest African American denomination, literally the oldest African American organization. So it's really important to know that. But he was elected bishop when I was 8 years old, and that's kind of atypical. Typically, what happens is that like you're elected kind of later on in your career, or my parents just had me a little older. They were like 40, 41 when they had me. So I was a little bit of a special surprise kid. I was the youngest of 4 girls. So in 92, when he was elected, his first assignment was South Africa, Namibia, and Angola. So we lived in Cape Town. We moved there in 1992. Obviously, this is before apartheid ended. Nelson Mandela was freed in 1990. And I remember he came to our church here in Atlanta, Big Bethel AME Church. And I got a chance to meet him and Winnie Mandela, not ever thinking that in a couple of years I'd be living in South Africa. But we were there for the transition of apartheid to democracy. I went to St. Cyprian's Girls' School. That's probably the best school I've ever been to besides my college, I'm thinking. And I had such a rich experience there. I boarded when my parents traveled. So I really was immersed in South African culture in a much different way than I think, a kid who may go somewhere and spend 6 months, but I felt South African. And when I came back to the United States, that was a harder transition to acclimate back into our culture here. After
Did you have a South African accent?
I did. Definitely had a South African accent. My sister said I would call, and you know how like your register might be a little different in different countries, like they go up and at certain times where as Americans, we just don't, either we stay at the same tone. But she said I would call and be like, "Are you well?" And she'd be like, "Am I well? Who is this on the phone?" So yes, I definitely had a South African accent. I ended up picking up, and I know Afrikaans is the oppressor's language there, but I ended up picking up Afrikaans pretty easily because Cape Town is a huge place for that. But I also learned Xhosa as well in school. So I was able to understand and be somewhat conversational, more conversational in Afrikaans than I was in Xhosa though. So yeah, I was.
So how old were you when you came back to the US?
I was 12, and my nickname in school was South Africa. That's what they call me. And I remember standing up in the middle, in the front of the class, and my teacher goes, "This is Stephanie. She just moved here from South Africa." And I was like, I'm from here. And she was like, "Oh, okay." So it definitely was like a different transition, and schooling is year round there. So I missed most of 6th grade. I did, I think, a couple of weeks of 6th grade there, came back and went straight into 7th grade because that's kind of how the calendar was. So it was, but I never skipped a beat. So clearly South African education was a little better than what we have over here.
I mean,
even under apartheid rule.
Can you imagine? That's actually pretty bad.
It's pretty terrible, but that's true. It's true. Like there was no gaps there for me.
Wow.
So I was able to go right into 7th grade, no problems, no issues besides socially. I figured it out pretty quickly though, but yeah.
So how was it socially? Like, did you have a lot of friends when you came back?
I guess, no, probably not. I'm thinking there was one girl that moved, and we're still like best friends to this day. Her name is Jada. She moved from California. I came from South Africa. We were both like very strange people at our school. But I am true to my talkative, over friendly, probably at times personality. So I got a lot. I ended up having a lot of good girlfriends. My mom started a mother and daughter book club because she felt like I wasn't reading enough. So, I had to invite girls from my class into the book club. So like I had those friends through my mother's relationships as well. And yeah, I enjoy being a part of the life of whatever institution I'm a part of. Maybe that's why I'm working in the space that I am, but like, yep. I enjoy being, in the mix, and a part of things. So yeah, I ended up getting some friends after the awkward, you talk like a white girl. Are you you're from Africa? Like all of those different really weird things that kids go through, disparaging you and who you are, because you are different and you have a different experience. But obviously I would not change any of this ever. That was such an amazing opportunity for me that I still grow from today. And I was there to witness the first democratic elections. And I remember all of the things that my parents helped to put together, from voter education to showing them what the ballot would look like. And here's where you make your mark for, who you're voting for, mostly obviously Nelson Mandela. I remember seeing the lines and lines and lines of people voting for the very first time. So that's never stayed away from me ever. And it stayed with me, and it actually became more clearer as I've been in this role. And I'm like, wow, I really was there, and I really was doing I was sitting there watching my parents do voter education with other leaders in our church there. So it was a huge imprint, which made me understand that this country is great, but it's not the end all be all. There's many other places. There's many other rich cultures. And as Black people, a part of this larger diaspora, like, I don't think it really matters where you go. You still feel at home.
Yes.
And the connection to the people that I have in South Africa still to this day is, it's ever apparent, and that will never leave me.
It's wild how the things in our childhood that were there for a reason that we don't realize until much later, it's like, it is ordained. That's why I was like, no, there's very few coincidences, because what? I mean, how perfect could that be to what you're now doing? It could not be any more perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's wild. So where did you go to school?
So I went to Hampton University. I know other people like to talk about other HUs, but I went to Hampton. And Hampton was actually the only school I ever started and finished at, because my parents moved a lot. Like, one thing I left out was that we came back from South Africa. We were in Atlanta for 4 years. Did we stay here? We're in Atlanta 4 years. And then we moved to Dallas, Texas, which felt like another country. And then I went to Hampton. And while I was at Hampton, my parents moved to Florida. So like, I just feel like I'm a nomad, basically. But Hampton was the first school that I started at and finished at. And that was such an enriching and awesome experience. And I think really prepared me for where I am. Going to an HBCU teaches you a lot of different things about yourself, but I think most importantly, it teaches you how to be really prideful and I won't say accepting, but completely embracing all of your Blackness and looking at that as a positive that really grounds you and undergirds you and helps you to propel forward. Obviously, I think there's a wonderful and beautiful HBCU family, but like, that experience that I had there, I had to learn how to hustle in a way that I don't think I would have learned somewhere else. Not disparaging folks who choose to go to other schools, but it definitely gave me a drive to understand that there's nothing that I can face that I can't really get over. There's a will, there's a way. You got to be creative.
So what was your major going in?
Journalism, broadcast journalism. I thought my goal was to be a CNN correspondent, White House CNN correspondent.
Okay.
So I thought I wanted to be a journalist after I went to space camp. My mom was obsessed with sending me to like really different camps in the summer. So I went to space camp, and I was the PR person, like saying, okay, the ship's about to take off, and And I was like, wow, this is like journalism. I should be a journalist. And it just stayed with me, probably from middle school on. And I thought I wanted to be a journalist, and I understand how important it is to tell stories and to have different people telling a story, because at the end of the day, it's very hard to speak about things if you have not experienced them. It's hard to even see things if you don't understand them, if you don't have any context. So I wasn't like trying to be like, okay, the next Ida B. Wells or anything, but I definitely thought I could make an impact in journalism, and really, tell different stories from a different perspective, but really also focus on political issues and political communication. So I thought I wanted to be a journalist. That didn't work out. I spent about a year doing that at the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer on PBS when Jim Lehrer was still there and Gwen Ifill was there. And I literally was like shuffling scripts in the studio with them to make sure they were staying on track and got them whatever they needed. And I was able to like help produce a couple like really small things, nothing too big, but it was there when I was like, I can't do this. I cannot be neutral and I cannot be balanced. I must be on the side. And that's right around the time President Obama came on the scene. And I remember feeling like, whatever this is, wherever this person is going, I need to go.
I need to go with them. So how did you end up working at the Obama White House? How did that happen? So 2000, at this point, probably 6, because he won presidency in 2008, but that was a long road. How did you end up in that realm?
Yeah. So from the NewsHour, when I was trying to figure out how do I get into political communications, I just knew I wanted to be like a spokesperson for like a senator or something, right? I hadn't even like thought about presidential politics, and I had to ask. Okay. Like, and I think I think some people think that there's like a magic formula sometimes, but you just got to ask people. You have to have conversations. You have to let people know what you want to do. And I talked to my parents first, and my dad was really good friends with the mayor of Jacksonville, the first Black mayor of Jacksonville, Florida. That's where they lived. And he told me that there was one person I need to talk to about political communications, and this is a Black man, and he knows who he is, Jamal Simmons. And I met up with him and I had coffee, and I told him, I want to be in political communications. I don't know how to get there. And he told me about a job opportunity, ironically with Rock the Vote, because now we're good with mail vote. It's so weird. But he told me about an opportunity at Rock the Vote. I went there. I don't know. I was a hot mess. I didn't know what I was doing when it comes to being a spokesperson. But that's where I kind of got an idea of what it looks like. And then I jumped into political communications through the DCCC, which is the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. There's all of these different like stations and places that you can be at that you don't know unless you have these conversations, unless people talk to you about it or you talk to them about it. So from there, you know, in comms, the thing is everybody wants to be a spokesperson. Everybody wants to be on the record. So I've had a different job every 2 years. I've never turned anything down that scared me. I actually realized that if it does scare you, you should take it. If it doesn't scare you, you should maybe let it pass and wait for something that's a little bit more challenging. So I took a new job every 2 years, working in mostly in congressional leadership with the Congressional Black Caucus, which was a wonderful, amazing ride, being their comms director. And then I went on to the Obama campaign after that in Florida as the deputy communications director for the state, which is a battleground state, which is literally where you learn everything as a communications person, because there's just so much you have to take into account and to be proactive about and creative about and organized about. So from there, that was my real introduction to the Obama world, working in this battleground state. And I went back to the Hill because it was safe, but it was a great opportunity to work with the Democratic whip at the time, who is now the majority leader, Steny Hoyer, as his national press secretary. And I still remember standing under Shirley Chisholm's painting her portrait in the Capitol, where I got the call offering me a job at the White House to be associate communications director for the president.
How do you even apply for a job at the Obama White House?
So you don't. That's a thing. Look, I think that there is something called PPO, which is like our personnel office that's typically at every White House, where they're recruiting, talent. But I didn't get a call from PPO. I got a call from people that I knew. Hey, they're looking for this position. They're looking for that position. Well, really also, this is kind of the plot twist here, though, is that I interviewed as I was going to be the communications director for the Congressional Black Caucus. I interviewed to be a press assistant. I did not care that I was about to be a communications director. I was like, I want to work in the White House. And Josh Earnest, who was the president's press secretary, said, you know what? You're in a really good spot. Do well, and perhaps you'll come back in another spot. And I was like, I was really, really disappointed. But then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna shake it off. I'm going to be a comms director for the Congressional Black Caucus, right? All of these amazing members. So why am I going to be upset about that? Well, fast forward, was it 2 years later, I ran into Josh on Capitol Hill. And I told him, hey, Josh, do you remember me? And he was like, yeah. Well, I don't know if he actually did. And I was like, I would love to sit down and talk with you. And he called me over and I had an interview. So it was a little bit of me being aggressive, right? Yeah. Trying to make an impression, ended up making an impression, doing the work where I was. And I think the thing about politics and public service in general is that it isn't about you. So, and as a staffer, it never is about you. You are seen and maybe you're heard, but you're not seen and you are heard, right? So like, you're always kind of in the shadows. Yeah. And I say that to say that like self-promotion, pushing yourself out there in certain ways are not okay, because it's about the principle. It's about whoever you're working for and representing. So it was very important for you to put your head down and actually do the work. And I really feel like over those years, I did the work and I put my head down and I learned and I built relationships and I made mistakes and I grew and I, try to be creative and I also tried to be aggressive, right? In those moments where I needed to be. And I know that if I looked at Josh in the meeting that we were in, walked back to my office, I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now. And I probably wouldn't be in this position. But I said, let me say something to him. Let me just, not necessarily to make something happen, but just to see, who knows? So I had to put myself out there a little bit. And I think that that's a lesson beyond the White House. That's a lesson for, everybody. You have to put yourself in uncomfortable positions if you do want to do something a little different. And it's not always going to feel good. And that perfect job does not drop down from the sky. And the job that I ended up getting at the White House wasn't the one that I originally even, was interested in, but it was an even better job. It was an even better opportunity in being the associate communications director. What that means is that I would help to create the rollout plan, or the way in which you announce different domestic policy issues. So whatever the president was doing, be that an announcement, be that talking about his, new task force for 21st century policing after the death of Michael Brown, how do you roll all those things out? How do you talk about that to the press in an effort to tell the American people what the president is doing and how he is working on your behalf? So it's a challenging job, right? And but it's a job of true organization, because not only are you trying to communicate directly with the American people, you also are bringing all of the partners, from the community partners to the agencies. Everybody comes to the table and they kind of get in line on how you push out a message. So that job taught me a whole lot, but I got the opportunity of a lifetime to go work on Valerie Jarrett's team about a year into that, though.
But there's something I want this drill down about aggression, about being good at where you currently are, about just having conversations and going where it goes. Because I think people are looking for formulas, right? Mm-hmm. And being like, how do I do this thing? It's like a nuanced pot of soup. Like, no one way got you there, but all these different moves, because you were aggressive when you needed to be. You backed off when you needed to be, and you was like, you know what, let me go do my work over here and be really good at it. Because if you were trash at the work you were doing, Josh wouldn't even give you a chance, because he'd be like, I heard about you. No, thank you.
Yeah. And nobody would give you an opportunity. And I remember Gwen Eiffel said to me, so Gwen's father was a presiding elder in the AME church. So we knew her family. And she said to me, I'll help you try to get an interview for that first job that I had in DC. She's like, but after that, you're on your own. Yeah. And that stuck with me. And I could tell she was probably a little uncomfortable, because I'm sure you've been in positions where people are like, oh, can you please recommend my child for something? Or can you please, and you're like, and maybe you do, and you're like, why did I do that? Because you're doing a horrible job, and I'm embarrassed for myself, and I'm embarrassed for you. But she took a chance. But when she said that, I knew in that moment I had to prove myself. And that was a lesson that I've taken with me throughout my entire career. It's like, once I get in the door, I have to prove why I'm in the door. Yep. And I have to do everything that I can to show that I belong here. I should be here. And I also think as I've gotten older and working with more younger people who are awesome and great, there is a little bit of a sense of like, I want it all right now. And if it's not happening now, it's not real. And if you're asking me to do something I don't really want to do, I'm not going to really put effort into it. I'm going to just do it in a way that just gets me by. Everybody sees that. Everybody feels that energy. So that's why I think it's so critically important that whatever you commit yourself to, you do it well, and it will come to you. It might take a little while, but it'll come to you. All that you hope, wish, dream, accolades, whatever, it's going to come. Just work hard.
And there's some positions that, hey, maybe if you got it 2 years before, you weren't prepared for it, right?
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So if you had gotten it and it went bust in that moment, you'd be like, shoot, you don't get a second chance. So a lot of times we think of denial as like, oh, I guess my opportunity. No, that denial might be a gift to you. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And you don't, and take it with a grain of salt and move on and move forward. I can say, like, now in my career, I'm able to be more selective about the things that I want to do. That doesn't always happen. So that's why you have to be ready to prove yourself, and you have to be ready to work hard. And then you have to take rejection and failure on the chin and keep it moving, because it will happen.
it will happen 1,000 times. I don't know anybody who, first of all, actually what's funny is whenever I ask people what they wanted to be when they were growing up, most people, like there's probably maybe a handful of people I've talked to who what they wanted to be was actually what they ended up being.
Yeah.
Like that in itself is a form of failure, but not really, because you actually learned where you wanted to go. So you went from associate director of comms to working on Valerie Jarrett's team.
Yes. And so that title was technically senior public engagement advisor, but really that job was like the director of African American outreach, if you want to break it down in layman's terms. So I was
Stephanie,
like the liaison. From
Stephanie.
I was like the liaison between the Black community, the civil rights community, criminal justice reform. I did, work with the team on that, but I was that person in between the community and in between the White House. And, it was that, I mean, the way I got that job was, I think a little remarkable and a big kind of full circle moment. Again, like as you're kind of climbing the ranks, you have these junior level staffers, and I was always a junior level staffer. And which means that like, yeah, you might offer an idea here and there. You might get to like lead on something occasionally, but ultimately you're reporting up and, you're making sure the work is getting done. And my good friend, Heather Foster, she'd been in the White House for a long time. She was tired. Okay. When I tell you, it is more than a notion, like how hard you work in these positions. I'm talking about you might get there at 7, you might leave at 11, a couple of days in a row, right? You probably will come in on Saturday and Sunday so that you don't get too far behind in emails. If you don't have your laptop at home, and it's a lot of like security things. So you got to go in sometimes. So, I mean, you work really hard. Burnout is real. So Heather, served in that position for a really long time. And when she was deciding to leave, she mentioned to me, she asked if I'd be interested. And I was like, I just prayed to God too. Cause I was like, I don't know how much more I want to do this position. And I mean, I wasn't like ungrateful or anything, don't get me wrong, but I felt like I was ready to do something a little bit more creative, a little different. I kid you not, a week later, Heather called me and I was like, yes, of course. So I interviewed with Valerie. I was like completely, nervous and crazy in that. And then fast forward to maybe a couple of days later, the Charleston 9 shooting happened. And it's an AME church. And I was literally the only person at the White House who probably at that point was an active AME, with my father being a bishop in the church. And when they were planning for it, this is another instance where I spoke up. When they were planning for it, around the service and around the president's role, I was a little like, why am I not in the conversations? Why didn't anybody call me or ask me? And one of my girlfriends, Ashley Etienne, pulled me to the side. She goes, girl, if you want to be in the conversations, you need to speak up and say that. And I was like, oh, I guess you're right. So I shot an email to Johannes, who is Valerie's chief of staff. And I said, look, I'm here to be helpful. I know the church through and through, like lean on me. Okay.
Tap me in, coach.
Right. I'm ready. He called me and was like, okay, we're having a meeting with Valerie in like 10 minutes, And I came to the meeting and I was scared in the meeting because I was like, oh my God. And the way Valerie had her meetings, she would always have like chairs around in a circle so everybody could see each other and hear each other. So like we're all sitting there. So like if you are nervous, you can't like play with a pen or anything. You're just in front of everybody. And they mentioned something that I was like, that won't fly, that won't work. So I spoke up in that moment, even as I was nervous, but I spoke up and I was like, I don't think that will work, but I'm sure they can work around it in this way or that way. I'm happy to reach out. And then Valerie goes, you should go. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm still kind of in the interview process. So I'm like, I'm about to go to South Carolina. So I packed up my stuff to go. The entire church was coming, like all the bishops were coming. So I knew my parents were going to be there and like my sister, my brother, all these people. I get there and there's a lot of work to do on the ground to make sure this all worked, to be respectful of the family, to really be respectful of the tragedy that we just saw and that we all witnessed. And how do you kind of bring these two groups together? And I remember in the planning, they'd be like, is this okay for the church? Okay, is this okay for the White House? And I'm like, yes.
Yes, and yes. So you're speaking for both.
I kind of play those dual roles in that moment. And at the end of the service, okay, President Obama sang, first of all, he's talked about taking the Confederate flag down. And I think Bill Clinton may have done that one time. I could be wrong, but like nobody talked about that. And growing up in the South, the Confederate flag, especially in Georgia, like it's flying everywhere all the time. All right, you're not going to miss it. It's everywhere. And people argue with you about how it's so relevant to their heritage and culture, but it is obviously a huge symbol of hate and our oppression. And I can't take it. And it's so degrading when people dismiss those feelings. But he talked about taking the Confederate flag down. And that was such a powerful moment. And then he sang Amazing Grace. I was like, this can't get
I
me
remember
better.
that. It was amazing.
And I was able to I escorted him and Ms. Obama out and Vice President Biden and Dr. Biden out and Valerie and everybody, made sure they had their seats. And I remember coming out and they're singing Old Ship of Zion. And when we walked out, everybody was like, ah! I mean, people were screaming at a funeral. They probably shouldn't have been screaming at a funeral for President Obama, but they were so happy to see him. And he served as the symbol of hope and comfort. So I understand all of those emotions, but my dad was sitting right there and he was looking at me doing all of that. My mom was sitting right there. So having them in that moment just made it feel more like full circle and real, like I'm doing something. And then when we were back at the end of the funeral, we were backstage and it was in a gym. So we're in this locker room area where he was signing programs and they were talking to the families individually. I remember I walked Vice President Biden around and I go, oh yeah, I'm Stephanie. He goes, oh, I just met your dad. My dad literally was like, oh, I'm Stephanie's dad. And I'm like, Daddy, they don't know my name. Why are you telling them that? But he didn't even introduce himself as a bishop. He's like, I'm Stephanie's dad. And he did the same thing with the president. But Valerie pulled me to the side and said, Mr. President, Heather's leaving. And he was like, oh, yeah, well, we're sad to see you go. And he gave her a hug. And she was like, oh, and Stephanie's taking her position. And I was like, yeah. Oh. He was like, Steph. And he gave me a hug. And I was like, what? That's how she told me I got the job. And then she walked me over to meet Mrs. Obama. And Mrs. Obama was like, my family is A&E too. And I was like, oh, jibber jabber. I don't know what I'm saying right now. It's so great. Yeah, it was such a surreal moment from such a dark place, but then going to a place of hope after his speech, you felt renewed. And then that was the same night that the Supreme Court okayed same-sex marriage. So it was from the depths to the heights of that. Wow. It was crazy. It was such a crazy day. I will never forget that. And I'm sure, I don't know if Valerie even remembers that, but that will obviously stay with me forever. Just because it's such a monumental moment.
Like the world's most epic day. Personally and professionally, the world's most epic day. Everything about it was right for you.
It really was. It really was. And, as you can see God's hand in all of it. And what you said earlier is true. Everything is happening in order and in time. And to have that time, especially with my family, was so special.
Wow. I love that story. So that's how you met Mrs. Obama.
Uh-huh.
and clearly she fell in love with you. I just remember y'all in the White House being epic in that my inbox was always lit with what the White House was doing to engage Black people to make it the people's house. And South by South-Lawn.
Oh yeah, swag surfing.
Cookout of all cookout. South by South-Lawn was I remember walking into the White House that day and being I absolutely have to try to drink in every single detail of today because I know this is beyond significant.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's the thing I loved too. The fact that we try to do different things, and shout out to Disha, who was really on the cutting edge of pushing the ball forward to have these really inclusive events for everybody. And it was the people's house. I mean, I think about the Easter egg roll and how many people we brought in. I think about the last Black History Month, the biggest receptions of all time.
Also there for that, because y'all had Morgan State's band playing outside. The White House was so Black.
Tennessee State.
It was Tennessee State. Oh, okay. So y'all had Tennessee State's band playing.
You know what? You're right. It was Morgan State's band for that one. Tennessee State's band did the opening of the African American Museum. That's the one.
Got it. Yeah, Morgan State did the last reception of the White House, Black History Month. Yeah. Y'all was serving Hennessy at the bar. I remember David Johns, and Unique standing by the bar being like, this is some Black shit. Like, y'all really have unlimited Hennessy, fried chicken. Y'all
macaroni.
had macaroni. It was just
Greens.
unapologetically Black. It was just, and we sat there just like, y'all, this is magical. We knew it was magic as it was happening.
Absolutely. And like, I don't even pinch myself, because I do feel like there were times where I was able to do what you're saying. It's just like, stay in the moment and realize kind of where you are and what you're doing and how significant this will be. And I'm always going to think about the dance event that we did for Black History Month with these little girls. It was my like dream to have. So I think Black History Month is usually like, you know, I've been buked and I've been, you know, torn. Like, it's always like downtrodden and like, we gonna help you Black people. And I'm like, can we stop that? Can we celebrate being Black? That's what it's about. It's not about like, yes, let's talk about where we've come from. Absolutely. Nobody's saying let's not talk about the history, but I think it's so incredibly important to celebrate who we are as a people. And I was like, why don't we do like a dance event that shows the progression of African Americans? So we can start off with Alvin Ailey doing their dancing, representing our time in this country being enslaved. Then we can go over to the Dance Theater of Harlem and show that's like Reconstruction. We start to get a little bit more access, and now we have you can do ballet and all of these things. And then let's also do hip hop to kind of show where it all like ended, like the melding of all these things. I take that back. We started off with African dance first, obviously, with Debbie Allen. She kicked it off with African dance. And then we went to, you know, unfortunately that period of time through Alvin Ailey. And then we went to Virginia Johnson, the Dance Theater of Harlem. And then we ended with Fatima Robinson for hip hop.
Yes.
And we had 50 little Black girls, about 51 little Black girls, ages like 6 all the way to 14. And my dream was just to see their little faces dancing in the White House. Like, how free can you be, right? Dancing in the White House. And we made sure we got some girls that did appreciate dance, and instead of getting kids that like wouldn't really appreciate the moment, but kids who have promise and there could be potential for them to go off and, you know, be a part of this art form. And I remember there's a little girl named Sojourner, which is like, wow. Of course her name is Sojourner. How
perfect.
And they called her Sojo, and she was the sweetest little girl. She had to be 8 years old. And there's another little girl, and she had no teeth, no front teeth. And when they were dancing to Alvin Ailey, and they, you know how they do like the movements like this with their hands spread, and they're literally dancing to like a very sad song. And she saw Mrs. Obama, and the look on her face was like, I mean, it makes me teary-eyed thinking about it every time, but I know that moment will forever live on in their lives. And we did this little wrap-up video with them where we caught them while they were waiting to perform, and they were sitting there and they were asking them, like, what are you most excited about? I mean, to be at the White House, and like, to meet Michelle Obama. And like the energy from them, the excitement from them, the hope from them, like, I know that will forever be implanted on their lives. And that's what I loved about the Obama White House. It was about the possibility of everybody, right? Mm-hmm. It's not the possibility of a few. It's a possibility of us all. So we're not cutting off opportunities. We're not cutting off, a path forward if you mess up. We're literally trying to give everyone an opportunity to be their best self in this country that is promised that, right? For not for everybody, but for some. So we're trying to change that. And that was we were actively trying to change it. So that is, I won't ever forget that. And I hope that, you know, even if people couldn't get there like you, but I really hope that people felt that, and they felt that coming from the administration, because we worked overtime, we worked hard, and we were proud of being Black, and we were proud of doing things, you know, with Black people and lifting up Black stories.
It was a vibe, which is why we did that swag surf. Cause I was like, it was me and 2 other people who coordinated the swag surf.
I remember jumping in it, and then I was like, oh, I'm at work, and I jumped out. So if you got to go back and look at the video, cause somebody has it on video, and you can see.
Oh, no, we have all the video.
Okay, yeah, I definitely jumped out. Why?
We even coordinated it via Twitter. So when we decided that we were doing the swag surf, we were like, all right, you know what? Let's do the swag surf in 15 minutes. So we tweeted, we was like, yo, whoever's at South by South Lawn, meet us in front of the sign.
I didn't realize that even happened.
Oh, absolutely. I was like, meet us in front of the sign. We're going to do the swag surf. So somebody's job, I can't remember who it was to go convince the DJ to go rogue with us.
Yeah.
And DJ said, bet. And 30 people swag surfed on the lawn of the White House in October 2016. Actually, the anniversary just came up because it came up in my memories.
Oh, really?
And somebody reposted it, was like, oh man, this is a good time. I was like, oh my God, the blackness. It was so real. The black excellence was so real.
It was.
Rants fam, if you haven't joined us in Love Nation and become a Love Cousin yet, I need to know what you're waiting for. Love Nation is my free community that is a safe space in a dumpster fire world. It's the place for the most thoughtful, funny, most chill deficient people on these interwebs. And we're a community that comes together to make each other better with curated conversations, opportunities to connect, and challenges to help us transform and do better in every area of our lives. So stop sitting on it, come to lovenation.com and get signed up. That's LUVVNATION.com. Get some highly exclusives in there. You can download the Love Nation app in the App Store or on Android. Either way, come through. All right, back to the podcast. Once the administration ended, again, I'm Forrest Gump. So I consider myself to be Forrest Gump. Because you know how Forrest Gump ends up in all the random scenes and you're watching the film and you're like, oh, Forrest Gump was there when this thing launched. Yeah. I'm Forrest Gump because I also was there at the last Christmas party.
Oh, yes. I remember that. Because you were with Yvonne, right? Yvonne Ortiz?
Me, Yvonne, Bose, Issa.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like, we basically, and we actually ended up staying long enough. We were the last ones there because Tisha was like, I'll be back. We ended up watching, like, from the inside, their helicopter leave.
Oh, yeah.
When they were going on vacation.
Yes.
And me, as this Nigerian-born girl who showed up to this country, it was surreal.
Yeah.
Because here I am watching, mind you, I've also never met President Obama. As Forrest Gump as I am, I've actually also never met him.
Really?
Never met him. So
wow,
it's the most random thing. But for you, as the exit was happening, like as that time was winding down, how did you kind of try to take it in?
You know, you're running at 100 miles per hour, and then to know that you're about to stop, there's relief there a little bit because you're like, okay, I am exhausted. But then it's also kind of like, you're like, oh my God, it's kind of weird. You may have like imposter syndrome. You're like, what am I going to do? What can I do? I don't even know what I'm doing. Who am I? Like, you kind of have that moment. But I will just say that obviously the election was so dark that you were kind of stuck in that. And President Obama had this saying, like, we got to run through the tape. So everything that we've been trying to do, we got to try to get everything done we can get done. This is before the election, right? But leading up to it. So we're all like trying our hardest to finish things, sprint, like whatever we can do on all these things, clemency, this, that. So we're working on everything. How do we talk about, the work that we've done? So it's just, it's kind of this mad dash. And then it's almost like we hit a brick wall. And I remember I had my favorite intern who was like my fake assistant, because I can have an assistant, but my favorite intern, Niat, she came over to my house and she's like super green, and we're watching the election returns, and we had the option to watch it in the West Wing. And I was like, I can't, because
that's intense.
It was just too much anxiety. And I was like, I don't want to sit there in the room. And I just couldn't do it. So she was over, my good friend Crystal, who worked in cabinet affairs, who's a lawyer. She was over, and, we were drinking and watching, and as things started to get like worse and worse, we were just like, Niat was like, well, maybe. We're like, shut up, Niat. So like all her little like hope, we were like, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Be quiet. Like it was literally like hitting a brick wall. And I think at maybe 2 a.m. I said, okay, I'm going to go to sleep. And then I woke up and I saw the news. Someone texted me probably like at 4 a.m. Maybe I went to sleep at 1 a.m. I don't know. I went to sleep late. I saw the news when I woke up at 6. And I remember getting in the shower, and just like one of those like sad movies when you break up with someone, I was in the shower, like crying in the shower. And I remember going in, and literally it was cloudy. It was like the cloudiest of days. I have this picture on my Instagram. right now that shows like how cloudy it was that day. And I remember I was in my office, we're all crying. Like I've never been in a situation where everybody's just crying, like at work. And we were all just completely devastated and I think scared, like just full on scared. Like what is really about to happen? And the president wanted us to come out to the Rose Garden for his speech. And I was like, I don't know if I want to hear hope right now. I don't feel it. Like it was challenging. And I remember CNN did this special on it and they zoom past some of our faces and they zoomed past my face and I literally looked like the world had ended because that's what it kind of felt like in that moment. But he was hopeful. And when he spoke, no lie, the sun came out and it shined on us. Wow. And when he went back into the Oval Office, it went away again. But the ending was not what you wanted it to be, because if you put your heart and soul into it, it's very rare that you work with, hundreds of people that are all working towards the same goal and are all passionate about seeing this country be and do better. And it's like, it just felt like everything was at that moment, like, is all hope lost? Obviously it's not. It never was, but we had to feel those feelings, I think, and just be kind of down. And I didn't even think about what's next in that moment. I was so shocked. I was so shell shocked. And then I was like, oh yeah, girl, you need to get a job.
You get it. So wait, did you take a sabbatical after the administration was done?
I wish I did. I did not, because working in politics. Okay. So any of your listeners who are interested in working in politics, it doesn't pay you any money. So I had spent so much time with my parents helping me like financially. And at that point, I was kind of self-sufficient, but I wanted to be in a place where I wasn't asking them for anything. And I was like, they've helped so much. Let me go out there and get something. I knew I was interested in a cross section of entertainment, politics, and pop culture. So I had the opportunity to go work with Deborah Lee at BET and do corporate communications. And I jumped at that. And working corporate, going from the public sector to the private sector is like, you're like, oh, this is for me. Like I take my nephew, he's like 4 to the store and he's like, this is mine, this for me. That's what I felt like. I was like, this corporate credit card is mine. So it was really exciting to see kind of how the other side of things worked, but also how much power and influence you can have, not just in the most powerful office in the land, but through culture and through storytelling and through content. And there's so much power there. And it's half of the reason, if not all the reason, well, half the reason, let's be fair, it's probably half the reason why our country is where it is, because all of these mediums really help to not only tell stories, but it helps to push narratives. It helps to, help people be more open to things or more closed off, to trust government or not. So there's all of these strings that can be pulled when it comes to, I would say, media, to really push the culture forward. And I knew I wanted to be a part of what can we do to help push this culture forward holistically.
So you are now the Chief Officer for Culture, Communications, and Media Partnerships at When We All Vote. So you basically end up back with the Obamas.
Yes, I came back.
Did you apply or did you get a phone call?
I got a phone call. So my good friend, who he calls me up, he's like, Steph, his name's Kyle. He's like, Kyle Lieberman, I'm about to do this. You've got to come, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't know, Kyle. At that point, I was at NBC Universal Cable Entertainment, helping to do something, like run a program there. I was in New York. I was like, I'm kind of content. I like, having a weekend and, normal days. And then Valerie called me. And I was like, okay, never mind. I'm coming.
You can't say no to Valerie.
You cannot say no to Valerie. But also I saw like the initial rollout of it. And I was like, and he asked me to help on one thing. And I remember like being at work and putting a lot of energy into When We All Vote and no energy into what I was supposed to be doing. And I was like, this is fun to me. Maybe I should go over here. And it's a different way for us to communicate about something that I love, which is politics and civic engagement and all of those things. But now we can do it in some really innovative and creative ways. And we don't have like the parameters that you might have at a White House or in Capitol Hill and other places.
Yeah, you've all done some really fascinating campaigns and initiatives, and leading up to this, another momentous occasion in election, like When We All Vote has been everywhere. You did the couch party with D-Nice. Like, what part of this position feeds you?
I would say that our whole mission is to change the culture around voting. And in order to be, in order to change culture, you have to be in culture. So figuring out how we can be in culture in authentic ways, how can we show up? How can we talk about voting when people are least expecting it? It's not about trying to be gimmicky. It's not about trying to like sneak attack and talk about voting, but rather it's how do we infuse voting into our everyday conversations? That challenge has fed me because you've got to be creative and you have to figure out the partners and people, that will come to the table and bite. I'll tell you, when we first started, when we all vote, everybody was like, okay, Michelle Obama's saying, okay, great. They kind of barely knew the name. And to see the transition of like not knowing what the organization is to like now you can say when we all vote, it is Michelle Obama's organization as opposed to Michelle Obama's organization when we all vote. I do feel like we're really on our way to see a difference in the way in which we talk and approach voting. With 47% of Americans voting in 2016, okay, less than half, nearly 100 million people sat out. We have to talk about voting differently in this country. And we have to bring everybody to the table, from marketers, to expert communicators, to people to think about these things in different ways. Our government has to catch up with where we are. And when we all vote is obviously like we're nonpartisan. So we're not, focused on issues or focused on candidates. We're really just focused on the act of voting. Yeah. And Mrs. Obama wanted to do that on purpose because she didn't want it to be about this one election or about that one election. It has to be about all of them.
Yeah.
And it's a big part of the reason why, we're in a country that we might not recognize at times. And that's because a lot of us have fallen victim to feeling and believing that our vote does not count. So the challenge of inspiring people, being a part of culture, and the great team that I work with, that is my inspiration, on a daily basis, because we're trying to do something different. And I do feel like, we're making strides and we're achieving some small wins and some small victories, hopefully to feed into a larger one.
Shoot, we would take that because I feel like we need all the small wins right now. We need to hoard the small wins.
We do.
So what gives you hope in this upcoming election?
I would say, the people. I'm confident that people are going to stand up for themselves. I'm confident that people better understand that their voice is literally their power. I think that, the civil unrest that we've seen from the continued police violence, the senseless taking of Black lives, the crazy impact of COVID-19, everybody is in a position now where they can fully see that every government position actually affects their lives. Not just the president, he absolutely does, or she absolutely does, but all the way down to your mayor who appoints your police chief, or the sheriff who you actually can elect in some cities, or not elect, or the district attorney who becomes that prosecutor who may prosecute the cop or not, or the governor who says COVID's fake or COVID's real. Like, we are in a spot now where we can see, whoa, this is a mess. And why is it a mess? And why do we feel like a mess? And what can we all do about it? And I think that people are going to be empowered to vote their values in a way that they've never been before. And besides all of the, I think the negative stuff that we've been hearing, the confusion we've been hearing, people are determined. And you can see that each and every day with the number of absentee ballots or vote by mail ballots that Florida's gotten. I mean, it's been a surplus in that. You've already seen the long lines in Virginia for early voting. It's not a game. People know that. People are ready to make their voices heard. And I hope that this is like a greater awakening for election seasons to come. And
for people to realize that, like, yeah, we're going to have to vote more than every 4 years. Like, I need,
you got to vote every election.
You got to vote every election. It's not just going to be about every 4 years. And as people are having the conversation about, what does liberation look like? It's going to be like voting and the organizing that's on the ground.
Right. You take your protest in the streets to the ballot box. That is another form of protest. And I think that's what really is important is as we think about the people who came before us, like the Black Panther movement and the Civil Rights movement, they didn't march without talking about voting, right? They always talked about voting. And I think that it's so important that we still have that in the forefront. I think that there's been a lot of say around, well, it doesn't really matter. Maybe we should hold our votes. And, what Mrs. Obama likes to say is that democracy moves on with or without you. So either you're in it or you're not. And the thing is that people are going to vote, and whoever they put into office, they're not beholden to you. and they don't care. So why would they care? So that's why we have to flex and show our muscle at the ballot box so that we can hold people accountable, and so that people that we put into place are working on behalf of the people, all of them, and not a select few.
What is the action that you want somebody who is listening to this to take, if they can take one action today?
Okay, well, if you're in a state that the voter registration deadline has not passed yet, because they all started in early October, get registered right now. And then make sure you get at least 2 or 3 of your friends registered. Have that conversation. I'm gonna say one other thing too, Luvvie.
Yeah, I'm listening. Go for it.
Make sure you sign up with When We All Vote so you can keep up with what's going on. We have a voter resources hub where you can come and you can see who's actually on your ballot. You can request your absentee ballot. If you have not done that, just make a plan to vote early. And when we say make a plan, that means figure out where you're going to vote, figure out what day you're going to do it, put it in your calendar, however you organize your life, and then bring your voting squad with you, all of your friends, your family. Obviously, be careful, wear your mask, be smart, but get ready and go and vote. Do not think about doing it later. Don't put it off. If you have a day to do it early, do it early. If you want to vote on election day, it's still an option. Bring your snack, bring your battery pack for your phone, be ready. But make your plan to vote and take some time to volunteer with us and join our texting team so you can help other people get to the ballot box.
I'll tell y'all what my voting plan is. I am going to go vote in Chicago Loop early voting because I think I want to just get it out of the way to make sure I'm not dealing with November 3rd crowds. And November 3rd is not the election. The election is now. It just happens to end November 3rd.
That is correct.
I'm like, I want to do my part in advance. So whatever chaos comes close to or after, I've already done and made sure my vote is in there. So it's in my calendar. I've marked off the day. There'll be no meetings around that time. I'm giving myself hours, and I'm going to carry a little backpack because I've been hearing that the lines are long, even for early voting, which I've never seen before. I've never seen it before.
That's energy. That is energy. So it's so important that we all, prepare. And I know that sometimes when you're a little younger, procrastination is the key to life, but not for voting.
Not for this year. Not this year.
Yeah, you'll miss out. And do you really want to tell your children, like 40 years from now, that you missed the election because you either forgot to register or you didn't make your plan to vote or you didn't know where to go, or that's embarrassing for your life. And your children are going to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
So like you need to, when I think about voting, it's not just about you either. It's about everybody else. So when you go in that booth, you're not thinking just about yourself. You're thinking about other people. And we as a country, we as a people have to think and consider others. And that goes to everybody. Sometimes people, are selfish when they go in the ballot box. And I really do think it's so critically important that you're prepared. That's why that ballot ready tool is really important on our voter resources hub. That's in voter resources tab on whenweallvote.org, where you can see who's on your ballot. But you got to think about other people. And when you sit home, it affects other people too.
That part. So I always like to ask people, as you're engaging in living in this dumpster fire world, okay? Because it is a trash
box.
It's a trash fire. It's just it's garbage. What's your self-care? How are you taking care of yourself? And just so y'all know, like Stephanie's skin, I'm just the woman's skin.
I'm shining, but I'm shining like ew, like you too shiny, you need to blot.
No, like Stephanie always gives me skin, always gives me red lip. I'm just like, so clearly she's doing something. So yes, what is your self-care game?
My self-care game. I've added in a couple of things. One, I haven't been really consistent working out. I actually worked out this morning for the first time in about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe a little longer than that. But that really does give me energy to be positive in the morning. I feel like a better person after I work out. I feel like I can conquer something, and then I have a cup of coffee, and then I feel like I'm really, on top of the world. And then that fades a little bit in the day. But having that time for myself to actually not think about anything. I know that sometimes when I'm busy, it's hard to not think about work, but just that hour in the morning where you're just focused, you're leaving before dark. It's just, and you feel the air and the sunshine, whatever's happening when you wake up and get out to go. I love that feeling of feeling I did that for myself, but that I am stronger. I also love the what is it? The Care app, that meditation app. Calm. Jesus, the Care app. Yes, the Calm app. I love that app. So I I don't do it every morning, but I try to do it as much as possible just to center myself. And again, like when I do it, I'm like, thank you, God, for this message, because it's always relevant to something that's happening in that moment. But the stillness of that is beautiful. And I see the impact of just like really centering yourself, because this world is crazy and we're filled with so much. We have to fight for ourselves right now as well. And that is my way of trying to fight for myself. And then, you know, I lost my father, who got really sick in the end of 2018 and passed away January 16th of 2019. So, you know, I'm still in that grief, like world and the early grief process. I know that it changes, and, you know, dealing with that is beyond real, and especially during a global pandemic. And I came home to be with my mom in Atlanta, and I'm like changing light bulbs. And if like I see, you know, I'm like killing a bug if I see a spot. Yeah, I'm doing the stuff that my dad would do. Like I'm taking the trash down the driveway. And so like there's not a day or minute goes by, not saying like, oh, I don't want to do the things you did, Daddy. But it's just like I'm consistently reminded of his loss right now, in a way that I probably would not have been if I was kind of living my get on the plane, go here everyday life. But it's you're sitting in it. So I do have a therapist, and I do talk to her. I try to do every week and carve out some time, because you need that. And we can't always face everything by ourselves. We don't have the tools to always do that, but thank God we do. Some of us have the resources. So those are the three things that I try to do consistently. And I'm not gonna lie, I do like to eat, you know, carbs as well. And a lot of them. And
carbs is my love language. Okay. Carbs is my love language. I'm not sorry about it. I just,
no. Like, and being at home in Atlanta, I mean, I'm going to have some fried fish and some fried this. And so I'm going to do it every now and then. It makes me feel good. Yeah.
As it should.
Therapy. What are you doing?
Oh, girl. All that. So first of all, this is how crazy it got for me. I stood up my therapist twice. And I was like, I'm failing. I'm failing. I got to get it together. So I actually like called my therapist last week, and I was like, okay, I'm sending us calendar invites.
Yes.
And booking it out 3 months in advance and being like, we're going to set this time. And she said, okay. So I sent her a calendar invite. So I was like, okay, I got to get back to therapy. I have been doing the Bible app, just trying to like read it at least once a day, just kind of open. As I'm scrolling through my phone, I'll be like, you know what? Let me read a verse, because get a quick word.
I need to add that to my list. Yeah.
Yeah, that Bible app. I leave it on my phone's home screen as a way to convict me.
Yeah, like just at least take a look. No, that's good. That's absolutely good. Yeah.
It's like, no. And then I have been, I've traveled twice so far. One, to go visit my mother-in-law for her 70th birthday.
Okay. Where does she live?
She's in Maryland.
Maryland, okay.
So I got COVID tested, which feels like wasabi is in your brain. Like, it feels like you ate too much wasabi.
Yeah.
But overall,
I was tested once. I want to forget it. Mm-hmm.
And even when we went, we literally stayed in her house. Like, we're not going anywhere else. We went from airport, her house. Airport, back home. And so for me, moments like that have been good. That's like, okay, praise God, get COVID tested afterwards. But I have been quarantining for real. I'm not seeing people. We have a pod group. Right.
That's so cute. So like your quarantined friends, like who can't go out of that. Yes. Yep. Okay. I like
these are the only people who we ever see, and we're the only ones they ever see. So what's up? Safe, cool. And even then, most of the time we're outside if we're doing something. But I think during this time, I've just been slowing down, trying to figure out what I need to do that's not going to run ourselves ragged, because as you know, a lot a us were used to the getting on the plane life.
Absolutely.
Constantly.
I mean, all of our, like from Essence to Leading Women to like, you're just going. And this is a stop. And it's also like assess, like, do you like where you are? Like, could you go further? Could you reevaluate some people, some things? So this has been an overall great awakening I think for a lot of people. And I also think potentially challenging for many who haven't been able to kind of find that balance that you seem to have with what you've been, doing in your life too. So
girl, balance is a constant search for balance. Like today I might seem balanced. Tomorrow I'll probably be like, what? Today's definitely not a balanced day. But I think it's definitely showing us and giving us clarity on what the life that we want is when everything is taken away, right?
Absolutely.
Like if we weren't defining ourselves by how many flights we were taking, because Lord knows, I see Stephanie in different states. I don't even know where Stephanie lives. I'm like, when I see Stephanie, it's usually in a different
somewhere
state.
else. Absolutely.
Somewhere else, and everybody's like conferencing and running themselves ragged. So now that everybody's sitting down, my friend Debbie Brown calls it the divine timeout.
Yes, I love that.
This divine timeout, and I think our job is to figure out, so when the timeout is lifted, how are we going to spend our time?
How are we going to do it? Absolutely. I mean, I basically moved from New York back home, which is challenging, but I sublet my apartment, and I was like, let me save some money. Let me assess, because when this is up, this is not necessarily, I mean, I had a great apartment. I live in New York, but this is not necessarily where I want to be. Yeah. So let me do that reevaluating now, and almost like, let me strip myself down even more in this moment, and just surrender and just be open to where you are, which is you quarantined at home with your mama and you're 36. That's okay. But like, embrace it, because when am I going to have this time with her again? My sister's down the street with my nephews. One just turned 4. So like, it's a little sweet age. And like, I've missed out on so much because we're always running. So I love that divine timeout.
The divine timeout. So I'm excited to see what everybody does when the timeout is lifted, because I feel like we will all be clear. If we're not clear, we ain't use this time well.
You're right. And it's not about how much you can do in this time. It is what can you gain from this time, right? To enrich you. And I think that people, especially on social media, have been like, if you're not doing this, I'm like, relax,
chill. I don't need this pressure in my life.
No, and or that energy. So stop trying to make people feel like they have to be doing something, but rather, everybody needs to take a beat and then go
your
vote.
Work is significant, and that's why I was like, I gotta have Stephanie on, because
thank you, Luvvie.
What y'all are doing with When We All Vote is culture shifting. It can change what happens November 3rd. And my hope, y'all, if you listen to this podcast, don't listen to my podcast if you're not voting. Like, don't even, like, not at all. I need you to make sure that you are going to be counted. Your vote, your voice is going to be counted on November 3rd. So you go to whenweallvote.org, whole bunch of resources there, just a lot of resources. Follow the When We All Vote Instagram, because that'll keep you on track on what they're up to. The initiatives have been popping. And then Stephanie is, of course, on the gram. We'll put all your links in our show notes. Y'all need to follow Stephanie's work.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just got verified, and I made the mistake of commenting on someone's page. And then I got all this like, you so stupid, you so go. I was like, oh wait, whoops. I forgot I'm like not really like anonymous.
Incognito no more. You're not incognito no more.
I was just saying my opinion, never do that again.
Listen, because the verified comments goes to the top.
I didn't know that.
Oh, girl.
I did not know that. Nobody schooled me on that. Okay.
Listen, your stuff becomes amplified. So whether you're making a random statement or not, they're going to be like, we seen it.
They are. Well, thank you, Luvvie. I'm super proud of you and all that you've been able to do, and using your authentic voice in the way in which you do it, because I've seen firsthand how much of an impact you have on women, Black women, and it's so important. So I don't have to encourage you. I know that you're encouraged, but I'm super proud of all that you're doing.
Appreciate you, boo. But yes, and thank you for joining me on Rants.
Thanks, Luvvie. Bye.
Yo, Stephanie Young was amazing. She is an incredible communication specialist. She's an incredible Black woman, and I'm so excited to hear her story. So be sure to follow When We All Vote on social media, y'all. They are at When We All Vote on Instagram and Twitter. And Stephanie is at SLynn Young. That's SLYNNYOUNG on Instagram. But honestly, the most important thing that you can do is to make a plan to vote. And make sure you vote. This election and the others after it are significant. And this is a major way to have our voices heard. We must protest and also make sure that our voices are heard in the ballot box. Much love, Chicago Recording Company, who I've been partnering with from the start of this podcast. And they've been such a huge help putting my recordings from home together and making it sound on point. Thank you for listening to Rants and Randomness. One quick thing you can do to help new listeners find our show is first to make sure you're subscribed to Rants and Randomness in your podcast platform of choice. Second, make sure you rate this show and leave a comment with a review, whether you're listening in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Stitcher. And finally, please share some insights and mic drop moments on social media. And be sure to tag us. We are at Rants and Randomness on Instagram and Rants Randomness on Twitter. No and. As always, follow me on social media. I am at Luvvie everywhere.